Hare Krishna. So we'll continue today and we'll do summarization of certain chapters from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita as we have discussed earlier. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsham ओम नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णनिष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशोध्यति पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रभुदाय कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरचेशे नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So first chapter, which is called the beginning. So he was born on 1st September 1896 in a little house in Tollygunge suburb of Kolkata. Since he was born on Nandotsav, the day Krishna's father Nanda Maharaj had observed festival in honor of Krishna's birth. His uncle called him Nandulal. His father was Gaur Mohande and his mother was Rajni. They named him Abhay Charan, one who is fearless, having taken shelter at Lord Krishna's lotus feet. At the age of 1.5 years old, he fell ill with typhoid. The family physician, Dr. Bose, prescribed chicken broth and he personally prepared it and brought it for Abhay. Abhay took it, but he vomited it immediately. So his Krishna consciousness was active right from that age. His grandmother called him Kachori Mukhi because of his fondness for kachoris. Kachoris are the spicy vegetable stuffed fried pastries, which are very popular in Bengal. At the age of 3, he narrowly missed a fatal burning accident. He was playing with matches in front of his house when his cloth caught on fire. But then suddenly a man appeared and put the fire out. Abhay was saved, though he retained a small scar on his leg. See the mercy of Krishna. Maybe it was a miracle that someone came at the right time to save him, because the kind of work he was going to do in future. At the age of 2 years, he used to play in the little garden with flowers. There used to be greenery and trees on the roof of Abhay's maternal grandmother's house. So Abhay took pleasure in watering the plants with sprinkling can. But his particular tendency was to sit alone amongst the plants. And he would find a bush and make a nice sitting place and sit there continuously for a lot of time. In 1900, when Abhay was 4, a vehement plague had hit Calcutta. There was seemed to be absolutely no way to check the plague, and then an old Babaji organized Hare Krishna Sankirtan all over Calcutta. At that time, although Abhay was a little child, he saw it and he wanted to join them. So his head actually was only up to the knees of the chanters, but he also joined in their dancing, and then the plague subsided. So that's history. Gaur Mohan was a pure Vaishnava and he raised his son as a Krishna conscious person because his own parents were also Vaishnavas and he had never touched meat, fish, eggs, tea, or coffee. His mother used to take him to Gangas and personally bathe him. She also gave him Horlicks, which was a food supplement. And when he got dysentery, it used to be cured with hot puris and fried eggplant with salt. Rajni was his mother, that is, became upset once because he would not go to school. So she hired a man for 4 rupees who would escort him there. The man's name was Damodar. He would tie Abhay with about the waist with a rope to take him to school. So in Abhay's childhood, he as well as his sister Bhavtarini, they used to go to the Radha Govind deities in the Malik's temple. So in their play, whenever they encountered any problems, any obstacles, they would pray to God for help. Please, Krishna, help us fly this kite. They would call as they ran along trying to pull their kite into flight. So that's a wonderful childhood which he had. Then Abhay organized the Rath Yatra, which was celebrated for 8 consecutive days. This Rath Yatra, basically all his family members were engaged. Even the neighborhood children were taken together in pulling the Rath Yatra by pulling the cart. They used to play drums, kartals, and chanting. Abhay's father, that is Gaur Mohan, had sponsored this Rath Yatra festival, and Rajni Maiya had cooked the various dishes and offered lovingly to Lord Jagannath along with smelling flowers. So basically, he was related to the Malik's family, which for hundreds of years had traded in gold and salt with the British. When Abhay was around 6 years old, he asked his father for a deity of his own to worship, and that's when he started worshipping his deity, started the deity worship, because father purchased a little Radha Krishna deities for him. From then on, Abhay would offer bhoga to Radha and Krishna, take Krishna prasadam. He would offer his deities a ghee lamp, put them to rest at night. So a proper methodology of deity worship. When Abhay was 15, he was inflicted with beriberi. At that time, his mother nursed him a lot. She used to rub powder of calcium chloride on his legs so that the swellings would reduce. And because of her efforts, Abhay soon recovered. However, a year later, his mother passed off, and he was very grieved. But his father consoled him and instructed that there was nothing to lament because the soul is eternal and everything happens by the will of the Krishna. So he should surrender unto Krishna. Abhay listened and he understood it properly. So this is all that was covered in chapter 1. Chapter 2, which is titled College, Marriage and Gandhi's Movement. So in this chapter, if we see, there are very few points. So basically in Kolkata, we had Presidency and Scottish Churches colleges. Abhay entered the Scottish Churches College because though it was a Christian school, it was well reputed amongst the Bengalis and many Vaishnava families sent their sons there. He was a member of the English Society where he used to recite Keats, Shelley, and other poets to his classmates. As member of the Sanskrit Society, he recited the Gita, especially his eloquent, what I say, notings and recitation of 11th chapter describing the universal form of Krishna was very well appreciated. Other activities, he used to play soccer and also take part in theatrics. In fact, he was a participant in one of the dramas on Lord Chaitanya, which was organized by Amritlal Bose, who was a famous organizer and director of theatre in Bengal. And Abhay played the part of Advaita Acharya. And he absolutely got the audience into tears with his performance of Advaita Acharya's role. Kalidasa Kumara Sambhava was something which Abhay was very impressed with, especially the word dhira, which means undisturbed or self-control, and that is something which he carried on in his life from there onwards. His classmate and close companion was Rupendranath Mitra. Rupen found that Abhay was always thinking about something religious, something philosophical or devotional about God. Once in his first year, he got an unusual dream at night about how the deity his father had given him complained that, why have you put me away in this box? You should take me out and worship me again. Abhay felt sorry that he had neglected his deity and he resumed his worship of Radha and Krishna at home despite his college assignments. His father chose Radharani Datta, the daughter of Suvarna Manik family associated with the Muliks for marriage for his son. As part of the Gandhi's movement, he was impressed with the cottage industry. Especially the cause of the cottage industry appealed to Abhay. Not because it was related to Gandhism, because not only simple living was good for long-term national economy for hundreds of millions of Indians, as Gandhiji was emphasizing, but Abhay thought that it was the way of life most conducive to spiritual culture. So that was his intention behind the cottage industry support, and he took to wearing khadi so that it meant that he was a Gandhian. After completing his college in 1920, after the final exams, took a short vacation. He traveled by train to Jagannath Puri. He had darshan of the deities, how 56 chappan bhogas were given to the deities like cooked rice and vegetables. And on a side altar stood, he saw how Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his six-act form was standing, manifesting himself simultaneously as Krishna, Ram, and Krishna Chaitanya. So he stayed in Puri for 3 or 5 days as part of that. So this was all covered in chapter 2. Then we come to the chapter 3, which is titled A Very Nice Saintly Person. So this chapter is basically about Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Narendranath Mullik, Abhay's friend, took Abhay to meet a sadhu from Mayapur at Manulta Danga. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was wearing tulsi neck beads. There were 12 markings of tilak. He was clean, having clean white brahmanical thread draped around his chest. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, "You are educated young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message through word?" I was surprised, but he did respond. Who will hear message in India, as India was an independent country under British rule? To which Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied, Krishna consciousness was so important that it could not wait. So Abhay was highly impressed. He was struck by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's boldness. And when his friend asked him for his impression, he said, he is wonderful. The message of Lord Chaitanya is in the hands of a very expert person. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was basically the child of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He was one of the 10 children born to Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He was a great Vaishnava teacher in disciplic line from Lord Chaitanya himself. He was a prominent magistrate. He was responsible government officer, superintendent of the temple of Lord Jagannath. In spite of those responsibilities, he continued his engagement in devotional service. In fact, it is said that Bhakti Vinod Thakur had a very rigorous routine. He used to take his meal, sleep from 8 until midnight, and then get up and write until morning. He wrote more than 100 books. One of his most important contributions with the cooperation of Jagannath Das Babaji and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was to locate the exact birthplace of Lord Chaitanya in Maya. And that is when Bhakti Vinod Thakur had prayed for a son to help him in his preaching. So he got on February 6, 1874, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born in Jagannath Puri with umbilical cord wrapped around neck and draped across chest like sacred thread worn by Vaishnavas. So he was named as Vimala Prasad. He used to like mangoes. At the age of 4, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was rebuked by father for eating mango not yet offered to Krishna, and then he decided that he will never eat mangoes again, and he actually never did eat mangoes thereafter. At the age of 7 years, he memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita and could even explain verses. His father trained him in proofreading and printing for publishing of Vaishnava magazine Sajjan Toshni. At the age of 25 years, well versed in Sanskrit, mathematics, and astronomy, he established himself as the author, and for one book, Surya Siddhanta, he received the epithet Siddhanta Saraswati. At the age of 26 years, father guided him to take initiation from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Receiving the blessings of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, Bimla Prasad resolved to dedicate his body, mind, and words in God's service. In 1911, BCST took up a challenge against pseudo Vaishnavas who claimed that high birth caste was the prerequisite for preaching Krishna consciousness. Bhakti Vinod Thakur presented many scriptural proofs that anyone, regardless of birth, could become a Brahmana Vaishnava. So Smartha Brahmanas, how to prove the inferiority of Vaishnavas, had arranged a discussion. So BSST wrote a essay, The Conducive Difference Between the Brahmana and the Vaishnava. So despite his poor health, BVT was elated to hear the arguments that would soundly defeat the challenge of the Smartha Brahmanas. In 1914, Bhakti Vinod Thakur passed away, and in 1915, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji also passed away, who was his spiritual master. So he took the editorship of Sajjana Toshni and established Bhagavad Press in Krishnanagar. In 1918, he took sannyas in Mayapur. He sat down before picture of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and initiated himself into sannyasa order. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was using the printing press as the best medium for large-scale distribution of Krishna consciousness. PCST thought of the printing press as Brihad Bridanga, big Bridanga term of the printing press. His teachings were based on the conclusion of Lord Chaitanya's teaching that Lord Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and that chanting of the holy name should be stressed above all the religious practices. On the authority of the scriptures such as the Brihad Narayan Puranas, Bhakti Vinod Thakur had specifically cited the Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So from their first encounter, coming back to Abhay Charnarvindam, Abhay had considered BSST his spiritual master, and Abhay began thinking about him always. I have met such a nice, saintly person. Whenever possible, Abhay would seek out BSST's disciple, that is the members of the Gaudiya Math. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was publishing his magazine Sajjan Toshni in 3 languages, including the English version called as the Harmonist. So this is the summary of this chapter. So what happens thereafter is in Srila Prabhupada has come to Allahabad. So Dr. Bose, who listened like a sympathetic father, always whatever Srila Prabhupada used to say. So he guided him and said that why don't he become an agent of for Northern India. So Abhay could purchase medicines and other items wholesale from Dr. Bose company and travel widely, building up his own business. So Abhay had enough experience, so he could try to make and market some of his own medicines and products also. So they decided that Allahabad would be a good place for Abhay to make his headquarters. So in 1923, Abhay, his wife and child moved to Allahabad. He chose Allahabad because traditionally known as Prayag. He found it to be a good location for business, but also one of India's most famous places of pilgrimage. He was accustomed to dressing as a European businessman. His routine was he used to take his bath early in the mornings with cold water. He followed this routine year round, and when in Saharanpur he did so during the bitter cold weather, the hotel keeper was greatly surprised. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had already convinced him that the only way to save a person was by giving him Krishna consciousness. In 1925, on a business trip, he spent a day or two in Vrindavan. That is the first time he visited Vrindavan. In January 28, he attended Kumbh Mela. Bhakti Pradip Tirtha Maharaj of the Gaudiya Math had come. So he visited few temples, especially established by followers of Lord Chaitanya along with Abhay. For 5 years, he traveled widely out of Allahabad, and when home, he put in long hours at dispensary and spent time with wife and played with his children. The Gaudiya Math relocated to a rented house on South Malaka Street near Rambagh, just a short walk from Abhay's house. Now it was possible for Abhay to visit the Math every evening, where he would sing bhajans, play mridangam, and sometimes took the lead part in congregational chanting. His father's wish was that they should be donating cow and calf to the Gaudiya Math. So he organized Harinam Sankirtan at home and fed the Vaishnavas. That night his father passed away. So Abhay shaved his weight, and now in his physical attire he looked exactly like a sadhu that his father envisioned him to be. So that was summary of chapter 3. So we'll take rest for the day today, and we'll continue our further chapters from tomorrow onwards.